The Detroit Lions are going to the NFC Championship, people. They took down the Buccaneers 31-23, and this game was a lot closer than what the final score may indicate. Okay, the Lions pulled away late in the second half, but Tampa Bay and Todd Bowles, they really surprised me. Baker Mayfield, he balled out in this thing. He threw 2 interceptions, including the game-sealing interception. But you can't put this loss on Baker. The reason why Tampa Bay lost this game was mostly due to drops from their wide receivers. Hell, even Mike Evans. We know how great he is. One of the best receivers of this decade. He was dropping passes. You know, you had your offensive line who, for some reason, didn't know how to stop the blitz of the Detroit Lions, putting you in 3rd and long situations. The Buccaneers, for them to have even made it to the divisional round is an accomplishment in itself. They should be throwing a parade in Tampa. But because before the season started, nobody thought that they were even going to have a winning record. There were people who had them in the tank for Caleb Williams sweepstakes. Todd Bowles is a solid coach, but I don't think he's a good coach. And that got exposed in this game because his defense, where was it? Who cares about the injuries, bro? Once again, don't use injuries as an excuse. When you get in the playoffs, everybody's injured. Everybody has some key player that's out. You have to be able to scheme that up. This defense was pretty solid for the majority of this year. But the Lions offense in the second half, at one point, they had scored 3 straight touchdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs had ripped off a big touchdown run when he juked out in Antoine Whitfield, trying to remember what his name was, the safety. And then you had another play when Jared Goff is getting it done, throwing it to Sam Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown. This was a world-class performance out of Jared Goff. It really was. Baker Mayfield played well, but Jared Goff played better. You see, I knew that Detroit was going to win this game. I wasn't expecting it to be a blowout, but you were at least expecting them to win this game by at least a touchdown. Tampa Bay, like I said earlier, for them to even have made it as far as what they did this season, you should be celebrating that. But they did have somewhat of a chance to win this game, but their defense, they just had no answers for Jared Goff and company in the second half. Detroit has so many weapons offensively. It's like when you got one dude stopped, you got to worry about another dude going off. Like, you got to worry about Amon-Ra St. Brown, then you stop him. You got to worry about Jameson Williams. You stop him, you got to worry about Sam Laporta, who I thought was injured. And then you stop him, you got to worry about Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. They got a really good offensive line. They got a fantastic pass rush, but their secondary is dog water. And going up against the 49ers, you know, you saw what Jordan Love and the Packers did to them on Saturday night. Detroit, you believe they can do the same thing, and I believe they can, but is their secondary going to be able to hold up? Green Bay secondary looked better than what Detroit's secondary looked like in this matchup. And the secondary for Detroit has been my biggest problem with this team. If they had a better group of cornerbacks, this possibly would be my Super Bowl lock. So I'm not counting them out against the 49ers, but many people seem to believe that they're going to make it to the Super Bowl and they're going to pull off an upset against Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers, but I'm not all that confident about it. I'm not saying that it can't happen, but if I was to give you my prediction right now, I would take the 49ers. That secondary is just not good. I don't even get how their defensive coordinator is getting head coaching gigs. For what? Like, his defense hasn't been that good this year. The secondary sucks. What about the Lions' defense is good? Outside of them having a pretty good run defense, that's about it. Like, this secondary, if you put them in a late game situation where they need to get a stop against Brock Purdy, I don't know if they're going to get it done. It's one thing to get it done against Baker Mayfield, but the team around them pretty much let them down with the offensive line not being able to pick up blitzes, receivers dropping passes. The Lions are a really great team, but against the 49ers, that secondary needs to play the best game that they've ever played this season for them to actually have a shot at winning that thing. It's going to be a close game. It could go either way, but the 49ers just are a more well-rounded team. Detroit's secondary is going to hurt them in that game. Baker Mayfield, their offensive line was not good. Hell, they had success running the football. Tampa Bay hasn't had success running the football in 2 years. They had a good amount of success running it on the ground with Rachaad White, and he was a monster in this game. We talk about how well Baker Mayfield played, but Rachaad White, he was an X factor in this game too. And Mike Evans had a good game, but defensively for Tampa Bay, you just couldn't get enough stops in the second half, and your offense was a little bit too inefficient. Your offense came alive too soon, too late. If Tampa Bay's offense would have played this game the same way they did in the fourth quarter for its entirety, possibly they walk away with the W. Hell, many people I talked to expected for the Lions to beat the hell out of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They were telling me that this game was going to be a blowout and it wasn't even going to be close, and it was kind of not even a reason to watch. And I was like, man, it's playoff football. You know, like, you just can't ride a team off like that. I get the Buccaneers don't really look all that impressive, and you may not be all that thrilled about Todd Bowles and Baker Mayfield, but they got this far for a reason. And this was a pretty competitive game. It was tied at halftime, 10-10. Right before the half, Baker Mayfield led them on less than a 2-minute drive down the field to score. And he threw a fantastic pass to Mike Evans, which put them in scoring range. So at one point, the Buccaneers were getting right with the Detroit Lions, and they did have an opportunity to tie this game up. They had the ball on offense the final drive. Baker Mayfield just couldn't get it done, but it wasn't really all his fault outside of that interception. He threw another one earlier, but it went through Mike Evans' hands, and it got picked off by Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who was talking a lot of noise on Instagram Live after. But this was a great season for the Buccaneers. There's no reason to hang your head down if you're Baker Mayfield or anybody on this Bucs team, because you laid it all out there. You know, that team didn't quit. They fought to the very end. They stayed composed. They had a missed field goal that if they would have made that, it would have changed the trajectory of how this game would have ended. But when you look at these top Bowls teams, one thing that Tampa Bay is notoriously known for doing is beating themselves, and they did it a lot this afternoon with the drop passes, the penalties. This needs to be a more disciplined football team in 2024 this year. Do they need to improve the roster? Yes, they do. This offensive line needs a couple of more pieces. You need to finally be able to run the football next season. And we don't even know if their offensive coordinator is going to come back next year. He may end up going back to Seattle and becoming their head coach. But if he does come back, you got to improve the pass protection. Definitely bring back Baker Mayfield, bring back Mike Evans, bring back the whole squad outside of a couple of guys on that offensive line. And Tampa Bay, they were in a lot of salary cap hell coming into this year. So they kind of just had to make do with what they could find, and they found the good bargain in Baker Mayfield. To me, he should win Comeback Player of the Year. Not DeMar Hamlin, not Joe Flacco, Baker Mayfield. I was listening to Colin Cowherd, his podcast on The Volume, before the season started. He said that Baker Mayfield should retire. I was like, damn, you think he should retire so he can save himself from the embarrassment? You know, Baker Mayfield has nothing to be ashamed about. He left it all on the field. He had an incredible game. Like, when he got rolling, he was fun to watch. He was getting outside the pocket, making crazy throws. He was making throws that I didn't even know he was capable of making. Based on how Baker played this year, he was a top 10 quarterback. He played better than Jalen Hurts, Trevor Lawrence. How many other quarterbacks this season you can say played better than Baker Mayfield? Not too many. Hell, I would take Baker over Tua Tagovailoa. Look what he did with the team that was projected to be one of the worst in the NFL versus what Tua Tagovailoa did. If the Dolphins had Baker Mayfield, they probably would still be in the postseason right now. Baker Mayfield had a really good season, and this was a pretty successful season for the Tampa Bay For them to even have made it to the divisional round, if you would have told me back in August they were going to win the division, I would have been like, okay, but they're going to be an early playoff exit. Then you tell me they're going to win a playoff game too. I would have been like, huh? What? Todd Bowles winning a playoff game? So there's a lot to build off from this season for the Buccaneers. The Lions, though, if you can dethrone the 49ers in the NFC Championship and you make it to the Super Bowl, do you know how legendary of a year this would be for Dan Campbell and that whole entire franchise? Like, they finally are able to conquer their demons of the past. They went from being one of the worst organizations in the NFL to becoming a Super Bowl contender. It's crazy. And they do have a really good shot at beating the 49ers. It's just that I can't trust that secondary to hold up against Brock Purdy. I really can't, because Baker Mayfield was doing a lot of work against that secondary. And the interception that he threw, the first one of the day, wasn't on him. It went through Mike Evans' hands. The second one, I give him blame for that. Your defense came up and got a big stop when it mattered, but turnovers aren't a reliable way to have sustainable success defensively. The 49ers don't turn the ball over that much. They have one of the best turnover differentials in the National Football League. Therefore, when you're going up against a team that doesn't beat themselves and your only way of getting stops on defense consistently is by taking advantage of turnovers, how are you going to get stops against the 49ers then? And with the way Rachaad White looked in this game, imagine what Christian McCaffrey is going to do against this defense. But with how well Jared Goff and his offense are playing right now, they can definitely keep up point for point with the 49ers. It really is going to be a game that comes down to whoever gets the ball last. If Jared Goff and the Lions offense can get the ball on the last possession against San Francisco, they're probably going to the Super Bowl. They got a great offensive line, and there aren't really too many offensive lines that you can consider to be elite or great. We've only had about 3 or 4 O-lines this season that have been elite. And the Detroit Lions, they happen to be one of them. And they've had a couple of injuries in this game. Their center got injured. One of their guards got injured. So we're going to see what their status is going to be next week against the 49ers. But this is a tough team. Dan Campbell has done a remarkable job turning this franchise from the laughingstock of the National Football League into a legitimate Super Bowl contender. And if the Lions make it to the Super Bowl, if they got to go up against the Kansas City Chiefs, best believe I'm going to be rooting for Detroit. Now, if you got to go up against Lamar Jackson and that young legend out of Pompano, I'm rooting for Lamar. But I want to be against seeing a Ravens-Lions Super Bowl. The way the Lions played offensively in the second half, they were on absolute fire. They have so much talent on offense. And it's just so hard to game plan for, because when you stop one guy, you got to worry about somebody else. And they're really good up front, both sides of the football. Their only Achilles heel is that secondary. If they had better corners, this would be my Super Bowl pick. But I'm eager to see what they do against the 49ers. They got a great win against Tampa Bay. I love what Dan Campbell said after halftime when they interviewed him. One of the reporters who was talking to him after halftime, they asked him, how you feel about the way this game is right now? And Dan Campbell gave a great response. He said, we expected this. This is playoff football. And the Buccaneers are here for a reason. And he had a point for that. He had a point with that. So, Jared Goff going up against the 49ers defense, he's going to have time to throw the football. Their pass rush is severely overrated. People keep saying they got Nick Bosa, they got Chase Young. Like, Nick Bosa has had a down season, and Chase Young, haven't even heard of his name since he got traded from the Commanders. I see why the Commanders traded him for a third-round pick, because the dude did absolutely nothing of note against the Green Bay Packers, and he didn't really do anything during the regular season after they acquired him. So the Lions got a chance if they can get the ball on the last drive of the game. But if their defense is on the field and you're asking them to get a stop against Brock Purdy and this 49ers offense to send them to the Super Bowl, I don't have a lot of confidence that they're going to be able to get it done. They got a really good pass rush, but similar to the 49ers problem on defense, their secondary is a liability at times also. But the difference is that the 49ers secondary is a little bit more consistent than what Detroit's is. But the Lions move on to the NFC Championship. They take down the Buccaneers 31-23.